Hey, thank you so much for clicking on the video. Before we get started, there is a major shift coming to the channel come the beginnings of May, but fret not, I will be very active and streaming regularly on Twitch. So if you have not created an account yet and followed me over on my Twitch channel, that is DarkSpiderDavid for the username. So it's twitch.tv/DarkSpiderDavid. So if you can help out with that by checking out the channel, checking out past broadcasts that I've done, and seeing if you like what you see, hit the follow button. You won't regret it. See you then. Hey guys, so I am DarkSpiderDavid, so it's natural that I'm going to be giving you a Spider-Man review on the latest movie in the series, Far From Home. Now, apologies for a little bit on the late side because I know everybody got the reviews early and shit like that, but I'm pretty certain that most of you want to hear my opinion. I am DarkSpiderDavid after all. And being that I was just shouting from the rooftop saying, this is my final season of doing videos on YouTube, but I might come back to do the Far From Home review. Well, that final season's taking up a little longer than expected, so it kind of overlapping my reviews. So here you go. Far From Home is the sequel to Spider-Man Homecoming, but more importantly, it is the Band-Aid that is trying to fix the broken heart that we are now trying to recover from after finishing watching Endgame. And it's funny because a lot of people, myself included, are feeling that way about Far From Home going in, but at the same time, I also see it as a little bit of an epilogue to the actual proper finale that is Endgame. Like Endgame, it's like you go into certain shows, like for example Breaking Bad, or most recently in the video game sphere, Red Dead Redemption 2, where you get your ending and then you have like an epilogue that kind of ties up the loose ends. Breaking Bad kind of had that. They had like an actual finale in the third to last episode, and the last two episodes are like the epilogue. Red Dead Redemption 2 had a very lengthy epilogue. I kind of consider Far From Home to be the epilogue of this 22 movie Infinity Saga. This one kind of wraps everything up. It has nothing to do with the Infinity Stones, obviously, but it does kind of address how things are trying to go back to normal after the events of Endgame. For the sake of argument, I'm not going to delve too much into the spoilers for, definitely no spoilers for Far From Home, so you don't have to worry about that, but no spoilers for Endgame either, just in case, even though the majority of the movie by Marvel is put out there. I digress. With Far From Home, Peter, like they played up in the synopsis, is trying to go back to a normal life. And what better way to celebrate his normal life, or back to normalhood as he sees it, than to go on a summer vacation with his class. The majority of his class comprised of his best friend Ned, and the woman in his life, the particular woman in his life, MJ, played by Zendaya. But when they go on this trip, being that he's Spider-Man, trouble is going to be following him somehow, and this crazy dude wearing a fishbowl named Mysterio is involved, as well as Nick Fury. And you know that friendly neighborhood Spider-Man is going to come out to play and be able to fix things before they go way too wrong and his friends are put in danger. So one of the funniest things I've noticed right off the bat is that this movie does something that I've always hated in sequels, particularly comedy sequels, where they go after the most lazy, most tired, most obnoxious plot device ever. Vacation, road trip, that whole bullshit. I hate that in comedy movies. I hate that in sequels where they have nothing else to do but say, oh, for the sequel, let's go on a road trip. That way we can get our tax credit back, not have to pay that much taxes to film on these different locations. They get to promote their locations, their tourist traps, and we get to make the movie for cheap, and we don't have to worry about a plot. And yet Marvel's still able to make a good movie out of it. So that's just the power of Marvel. Call me a Marvel bitch if you like, but Far From Home is definitely a well put together Marvel movie and a very well put together Spider-Man movie that is still able to take that archetypal tired trope of vacation time and being able to make it work with Spider-Man as a character, with Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man and his friend Ned trying to save the world in the progress. Now, what I found interesting though is that this template of using the vacation as a backdrop to be able to thwart these elementals, these monsters that are arising out of nowhere with the help of Mysterio, it is taking a little bit out of a Saturday morning cartoon. The way it plays out, some of the dialogue, some of the way characters react to each other is very Saturday morning cartoonish, where it is that much more relaxing. It kind of reminds me of how we needed to watch Ant-Man and the Wasp with the proper eyes, where right off the bat, you can tell, okay, get Endgame out of your mind. And it's interesting that the first 5 or so minutes of the movie is able to address the events of Endgame in a much more comedic way to try to heal those wounds, even though it's constantly reminding us of what we lost and what damage we had to take with Endgame. But Far From Home is still able to kind of take that. I say this in a sincere and fondest way possible, in a juvenile sort of way. And when I say juvenile, I don't mean like in a very immature way, but more so in a way where it's like, hey, let's kind of look at the bright side of things. It takes that tone upon it. So I'm like, okay, cool. Plus, it shows some interesting perspectives when it comes to the snap that I was like, oh, so that's how that happened. So I thought that was pretty interesting. With that out of the way, I have to admit, I don't know if it was me. I don't know if it was maybe the audience that I was watching it that caused there to be a level of silent waves being kind of reverberated across the room. But the first 20 or so minutes of this movie, gotta be honest, a little bit on the slow side. I thought this movie opened a little too slow, not only with our intake of Spidey in the movie, mainly because right off the bat I noticed that certain scenes were actually cut up from the trailers that I'm like, oh, that's a shame that didn't make it into the cut. But also some of the humor, I don't know what it was, but some of the humor felt uninspired to me. There was certain jokes that just didn't land, certain jokes that weren't even there in the first place. Like it was building up to a joke. There was one about a certain tourist shop that they wanted to visit, ended up being closed, and the whole punchline was some other guy saying, "You didn't check the website?" And I'm like, that was the joke. And then it just cuts to like the next scene. I'm like, wow, that was awkward. And there's certain levels of awkwardness in this movie where it gets a little too awkward, whether it be with that humor or even some relationships that most of you are gonna be wanting to ship. I was right there with you, but there's a certain threshold I have with awkwardness, and after a while, I'm like, okay, come on. Let's start acting a little bit more human, shall we? But when a little bit of that inspiration was taken out of the humor, probably because there was much more things to laugh at, and much more in the background gags, or very high school kind of Breakfast Club type of ambiance that was happening in Homecoming, because that was our first version of Spidey in the MCU. This one lacked that a little bit. But when that inspiration came back into play is once we introduced Mysterio and the Elementals and the entire backstory of what is going on. That does unfold and twist the plot in a way where certain folks, mainly the people who read the comics, are going to see way ahead of time, but it's still very effectively done. And then people who have never read the comics and this is the only version of Spider-Man and these characters and Mysterio that they've ever witnessed, they're going to be in for quite a ride. Me going in, I was like, well, there's that shoe. I was just waiting for it to drop, and when it did, I was at least glad that they were able to do it in a way that does reflect the comics effectively well. They did it justice, and there's one particular sequence that I seriously can't wait to rewatch on YouTube. Maybe not the whole movie in theaters, but on YouTube, I cannot wait to watch the sequence because I was waiting the longest time when they said that Mysterio was going to be in this movie. I'm like, you got to do something like this to a certain point, and they did. And it's a very effective sequence that I'm like, yeah, when Spidey and Mysterio are involved in the same plot or in the same kind of comic or arc or whatever it is that they're in, this needs to happen, and it does, and I'm glad that they went there. And speaking of Mysterio, Jake Gyllenhaal nailed it. It's funny because he started off kind of one note when he was being the mentor figure that we were watching from the trailers, and he was still doing a good job at that. I just thought that he was just kind of one-dimensional. But as the movie progresses, let's just say that he was able to give a much more nuanced performance that I'm like, that's why they cast you. That's why you're here. And I'm glad that you're here. From that point forward, pretty much all of the cool and very actiony stuff that we loved from Homecoming comes back into play in Far From Home, where we get the cool action sequences. We get Spidey wearing different suits, from the new black and red suit to the stealth suit, him trying to thwart the Elementals and trying to work with Mysterio. Mysterio's costume looks cool in action, even when he's wearing the fishbowl head. I can't believe he actually looks awesome that way, when back in the comics he looked like a doofus. But over time, they were able to make him cool and all muscular in some versions of those comics. comics, and that's kind of what they go for in his design here. And it works. It works on screen. They both look, realistic, and some of the supporting characters helping out with some of that action. Jon Favreau as Happy Hogan coming back into here. He steals some scenes here and there. Zendaya as MJ herself, she does effectively good work here. So that's when the movie definitely picked up pace. That's not to say that it has its blemishes here and there, but from that point forward, that's when I'm like, yes, this is what I liked about Homecoming, and I'm glad that it's back. Sure, it ends in a very satisfying way, but let's just say that the end credit scenes, they are definitely something to talk about. It's a little bit of a shame that even though the movie's well put together, the big conversation starter in the room are going to be the end credit scenes, because it does leave Spider-Man in a very, very interesting place in the MCU. And I'm looking forward to, at some point in the future, either doing a form of video or possibly even a live stream down the line to talk about some of those spoilers with you guys. For now, I'm going to say something that could be kind of considered somewhat of an unpopular opinion, but even though I really did enjoy Far From Home, walking out of it with a good sense of the action and the interpretation of Spider-Man and his interactions with Mysterio and how well executed that was, both for the character of Mysterio and also with what needs to happen when Spider-Man is involved, as well as where we're left off in the current timeline of things with Spidey. That makes me very intrigued. I kind of prefer Homecoming a little bit better, only because, again, almost every dimension and asset of that movie, from the inclusion of Iron Man to the humor to the high school interpretation of Spidey and him trying to keep his identity a secret and all that stuff, was a bit more inspired, whereas this, it felt like the writers and the director John Watts were much more focused on getting Mysterio right and his inclusion in this movie, more so than some of the humor and some of the side characters that were thrown in there. Like JB Smoove is in this movie, and sometimes he looked a little lost. I'm like, what do you do? Okay, so though I prefer Homecoming, I'm still very glad with Far From Home's outcome and how I enjoyed myself with it. So I'm going to be giving Far From Home a low 8 out of 10. Still thoroughly enjoyed it. Wouldn't mind catching it again, but probably like on home video or something, like on DVD, Blu-ray, or what have you. And there's going to have to be a very cool looking steelbook to get me to own it. Otherwise, I think I'm good. Thank you guys so much for watching my review of Spider-Man Far From Home. Please let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of the film. Keep it spoiler free because we're not ready to dive into that giant pool just yet. But if you guys want to see either a separate video, or more likely and more preferably a live stream where we can kind of all chat in real time about those spoilers, please post in the comments below if you guys want to see that. Make sure you like and share. Follow me on Instagram and on Twitter, DarkSpiderDavid, at DarkSpiderDavid, all one word, no caps. And be sure to follow me on Twitch.tv. I'm now an affiliate, and I'm planning on doing a giveaway very, very soon for my 102 followers as of now. So if you guys want to be a part of that, go over there, hit the follow button. It's only for my followers, so you guys can be part of that giveaway. Twitch.tv/DarkSpiderDavid. I'll see you guys next time. In the meantime, take care and have a good day.